Before the flood drowned the world and erased the footsteps of giants, a terrifying secret was already unfolding, one that twisted the destiny of humanity long before Noah ever lifted an axe. There was a time when the earth trembled not from storms, but from the steps of beings born of forbidden unions. Warriors whose shadows swallowed the valleys, whose power bent nations and whose pride provoked the judgment of heaven itself. These were the Nephilim, mighty, brilliant, ruthless, and their rise marked the moment when humanity drifted so far from its creator that destruction became the only cure. But how did this ancient darkness begin? What crack in human history allowed celestial beings to cross into our world and reshape it with violence, fear, and corrupted glory? Today we uncover the truth behind the giants, the angels who fell, and the world that God himself chose to reset. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to Kingdom Stories, and don't forget to like and share this video so more people can discover the mysteries hidden in Scripture. Now, let us return to the moment the first giant opened his eyes and the fate of the world began to change forever. Before the great flood reshaped the world, when the earth still carried the faint echoes of Eden, a different kind of generation walked among humanity. They were known as the Nephilim, giants born of forbidden unions, warriors strong enough to topple walls with their bare hands, hunters who could face wild beasts without fear, and builders who lifted colossal stones to glorify their own names. Their power amazed those who saw them, but beneath their might lay a warning. Their existence signaled a shift in history, a turning point where the Creator would eventually decide to intervene before darkness consumed everything. But long before these giants ruled the valleys and captured the hearts of men, something else had to unfold, something rooted in the earliest days outside Eden's gates. To understand the rise of the Nephilim, we must go back to the beginning, to the moment humanity tried to rebuild life after the loss of paradise. Between the sorrow for Abel's blood and Cain's restless struggle to carve out a new identity, humanity took its unsure first steps into a world already touched by guilt. It was a young world, but one marked by deep wounds. Eden, the garden where all life began, remained behind them, guarded by cherubim who protected the way to the tree of life. The earth, fresh from the Creator's hands, now carried the stain of the first human bloodshed. After Cain struck down Abel, silence settled over the valley like a heavy cloud. Genesis 4:16 tells us that Cain left the presence of the Lord and lived in the land of Nod, east of Eden. There the ground was harsh, and the winds whispered reminders of every choice he had made. Yet Cain did not surrender to despair. He took a relative as his wife, her name unrecorded, and they had a son. Cain named the boy Enoch, not the same Enoch who later walked with God, but a symbol of Cain's attempt to begin again. Driven by a desire to prove that judgment would not erase his legacy, Cain built a city and named it after his son. Every stone he placed spoke of his determination to create something that would last. Humanity learned early that even with wounded hearts, people longed for security, order, and meaning. Cain's descendants carried this creative spark further. Genesis 4 introduces Lamech, who took 2 wives, Adah and Zillah. From their lineage came individuals of remarkable skill: Jabal, the father of those who dwell in tents and keep livestock; Jubal, the pioneer of music, crafting harps and flutes; Tubal-Cain, the master of bronze and iron; and Nama, whose beauty and presence were remembered for generations. These gifts revealed that the Creator still allowed creativity to flourish even after humanity's fall. Life developed rhythm, shepherding, music, craftsmanship, artistry. Yet as human hands grew skilled in building, human hearts grew vulnerable to pride. What was meant to inspire gratitude began to stir vanity. But far beyond human sight, something else was unfolding, something far more dangerous than anyone realized. While Cain's descendants raised walls and forged tools, another realm watched. In the invisible world, there were beings created for light, beings who had been assigned heavenly places. But some chose to abandon their appointed realm. Genesis 6:1-4 later describes them as the sons of God who descended to earth, drawn by the beauty of human women. a shadow began to stretch across history, preparing the stage for figures whose fame and might would echo through generations: the Nephilim. Families continued plowing fields and building simple lives, unaware that hidden forces were drawing nearer. The world seemed to advance in skill and culture, but beneath that progress lay a growing vulnerability, a doorway through which corruption would enter. Soon the line between progress and downfall would blur, and humanity would step into an age of impressive achievement and profound darkness. Time passed, and the memory of Eden faded into quiet stories told around campfires. The descendants of Seth held on to a measure of reverence, gathering to call upon the name of the Lord as Genesis 4:26 records. Small groups prayed, sang, and passed down Adam's stories to their children. Hope still flickered, but so did distraction. The land offered harvests. Cain's cities offered music, metalwork, and feasts. Everyone seemed to follow their own path. Then Genesis 6 introduces a moment that changes everything. As humanity multiplied and daughters were born, the sons of God saw their beauty and took wives from among them. These sons of God were angels who deserted the place the Creator had assigned them. Seduced by human beauty, they crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, twisting the very purpose God had set. Jude 6 mentions angels who abandoned their proper dwelling, and 2 Peter 2:4 recalls that God did not spare these angels but cast them into darkness. What seemed unimaginable, the invisible merging with the visible, happened before humanity's eyes, though few understood the scale of this rebellion. From these unions arose beings of extraordinary presence, described as powerful and mighty. Their name was Nephilim, a word hinting at both fall and greatness. They were not merely large men. They were rulers, influencers, lawgivers, and warriors who shaped entire cultures. Stories of their feats spread rapidly: giants who tore down walls, hunters who defeated monstrous beasts, builders who lifted immense stones to honor themselves rather than God. Children learned their names before they learned the stories of their Creator. Fascination grew into obsession. Some admired them as protectors, others worshipped them as gods. But wherever they settled, violence and corruption grew. Songs that once celebrated gratitude were rewritten to glorify strength. Tools forged for farming became weapons for conquest. Festivals turned into indulgent displays of luxury and desire. Smaller communities were forced into servitude. The Nephilim demanded tribute, built altars to themselves, and taught that pleasure and power mattered more than justice or mercy. Genesis 6:5 paints the result clearly. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great on the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. Verse 11 adds, "The earth was corrupt in God's sight and filled with violence. But behind their beauty and might, cracks were forming." Cut off from the true source of life, each new generation of giants grew more ruthless. Families suffered under their rule. Altars to the Creator were abandoned, replaced by monuments to human pride. While humanity applauded them, heaven saw destruction taking root. Still, not everyone bowed. There were a few who quietly refused to surrender their hearts to the giants' influence, souls who still whispered prayers into the night, who remembered the Creator even when the world forgot. There were still hearts, fragile, hesitant, yet sincere, that continued to seek the Lord even in the shadow of fear. Though the world around them celebrated strength and domination, these quiet souls held on to a deeper truth. They whispered to their children that real power was not found in the might of the Nephilim, but in faithfulness to the Creator. Their voices were small, almost lost in the noise of pride that filled the earth, but they remained. Even as the culture around them grew louder, bolder, and more corrupt, a thin thread of devotion still stretched across generations. Yet that faithful minority seemed to shrink with every passing year. As pride shaped cities and violence shaped societies, the world moved toward a breaking point. The earth prospered in industry, invention, and architecture, but its leadership, the giants who governed it, knew no restraint. Their hands held authority, but their hearts knew nothing of mercy. Violence filled fields, streets, and marketplaces, becoming a normal part of life. Above all this turmoil, a just and watchful God observed the state of humanity. knowing that if he did not intervene soon, there would be nothing left to redeem. Years passed, and what began as curiosity about the valiant giants evolved into outright submission. The Nephilim were no longer viewed merely as impressive beings. They became unquestioned rulers over lands, rivers, and the very breath of the people. Nearly every village carried its own story of oppression. Tributes were demanded, often by force. Families were torn apart. Harvests were seized before they had even ripened. Fear became the unspoken currency of society, traded daily to keep the giants pleased. Colossal monuments rose in honor of the Nephilim, carved with stone blocks so large that ordinary men could not imagine how they had been moved. Along the valley floors, scribes etched the giants' victories, tales of war, hunts, and domination, onto rock faces meant to last for centuries. Children learned to repeat the legends of these warriors long before they learned the stories of the God who created them. Reverence for the Creator faded until it became little more than a distant and fading memory. Town squares filled with carved images imitating the features of the giants. People offered sacrifices on altars built in their honor, hoping to earn their protection or escape their wrath. Everyday life grew fragile in the midst of such arrogance. Small settlements were erased to make room for fortress cities. Those who dared resist were seized, enslaved, or worse. Music, once a celebration of life and gratitude, became a tool to exalt brutal victories. Festivals that had once honored harvests or family became clouded with dark rituals that mocked purity and justice. Humanity began to value cruelty over compassion. Young men were trained to delight their leaders, taught that dominance mattered more than integrity. Women were treated as trophies to be displayed. The elderly became burdens to be cast aside. The earth, once entrusted to human stewardship, was exhausted by greed and neglect. But there were eyes, divine eyes, that saw beyond the glittering monuments and violent celebrations. The Lord observed an earth nearly consumed by corruption. He saw hearts crushed beneath oppression. He saw parents hiding their children from the wrath of the rulers. He saw seeds of goodness buried under a culture obsessed with power. Though humanity had nearly forgotten him, he had not forgotten them. Amid the countless names carved into stone, names of warriors, conquerors, and kings, one name, quiet and uncelebrated, stood out. It belonged to a simple man. He was not tall. He commanded no armies. He built no monuments. But he carried something none of the giants possessed: integrity. While the Nephilim multiplied violence across the land, this man walked gently, honoring the Creator in a world that no longer cared to do so. His name was Noah. God's gaze rested upon Noah, and in him the Almighty found a heart ready for a new beginning. While the leaders around him celebrated their own greatness, God quietly crafted a plan to preserve what goodness remained. The world continued its descent into darkness without realizing that history was approaching its pivotal moment. Judgment would be declared, but along with it, a promise would be given, a promise of safety for those willing to trust in the Lord. As violence and pride filled the streets, Noah lived differently. He worked the soil alongside his sons. He cared for his family. He kept his thoughts and desires turned toward the Creator. The applause of crowds never reached him, and the arrogance of giants never shaped him. What he carried was far greater than applause, an upright heart. His humble life shone in stark contrast to the chaos of his time. Seeing that wickedness had overtaken the world, the Almighty revealed his plan to Noah. A flood would come, greater than anything humanity had seen, washing away the corruption that had overtaken creation. But within this judgment lay hope, for God offered Noah a way to protect life. The command was clear: build an ark. God described the structure in detail: strong timber, sealed walls, multiple levels, and careful divisions. Its size would be massive, large enough to shelter people and animals. Noah received the instructions and began his work with unwavering courage. He selected trees, cut the wood, measured each plank, and assembled the beams. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, worked at his side, learning every dimension and technique. As years passed, the ark grew until it filled an entire valley, towering over everything around it. Each strike of the axe became an act of faith. Soon, the people noticed. They walked from distant towns to watch this strange construction. Men laughed openly, women whispered mockingly, some shook their heads in pity. Even the Nephilim came, towering over the workers, scorn etched across their faces. To them, Noah's project was foolishness. How could a boat save anyone on dry land? One giant even threatened to destroy the ark, but stepped back when confronted by Noah's steady resolve and the unwavering unity of his sons. Finally, after decades of labor, the ark was complete. 3 levels, a window to let in light, and a side door wide enough for the largest animals. Inside were compartments for every creature, storage for food, seeds and tools, everything necessary for a new beginning. It was more than a vessel. It was a promise carved in wood. Then came the moment God instructed Noah to gather the animals, pairs of every kind and 7 pairs of those considered clean. The sight astonished all who watched. From mountain slopes came goats and deer. From the valleys arrived wolves, foxes, and wildcats. Birds filled the skies in swirling patterns. Even insects crawled in neat procession. It was as though creation itself obeyed a silent, sacred call. But the people only watched in disbelief. Their hearts hardened. Noah, his wife, his sons, and their wives entered the ark. Mocking voices echoed outside. Some pounded on the walls, others begged to be allowed in. But then the great door closed, not by human hands, but by the hand of God. A profound silence settled over the valley. Dark clouds gathered. Rain began gently, then with growing force. Water streamed along the ground, filling crevices, then streets, then valleys. Springs burst upward from the earth. Rivers overflowed. Homes collapsed. People ran, climbed, screamed. The Nephilim fought desperately, lifting logs to float, climbing higher ground, but no strength could withstand the rising waters. Pride dissolved into panic. Every cry for mercy came too late. Inside the ark, peace reigned. Animals rested, the family prayed. Thunder roared, but their hearts held steady. For 40 days and nights the rain continued. Mountains vanished beneath the floods. Cities disappeared. The monuments of giants dissolved. The age of the Nephilim ended not with triumph, but with silence. When the waters finally receded, the ark held the seeds of a new world. God had preserved life in the midst of judgment, proving that destruction was never his final word. As Noah stepped onto dry ground, the world before him was quiet, cleansed, ready for renewal. The giants were gone. Their songs, their altars, their monuments, all swept away. Yet their memory remained as a warning etched into human history. Different cultures would one day speak of titans, demigods, and ancient builders, faint shadows of a truth Scripture records clearly. They existed because a boundary was crossed, because beings created for glory abandoned their place and corrupted what God had made. Even today, ruins, legends, and unanswered mysteries stir curiosity. But behind every fragment lies a deeper truth. Pride leads to ruin. Violence destroys. Human arrogance has limits, and God's mercy remains the only refuge. The story of the Nephilim is not ultimately about giants. It is about the human heart and the danger of living apart from the Creator. And as this story closes, a gentle call echoes across time. May every generation learn from the past. May faith like Noah's, simple, steady, obedient, guide us when power tempts and pride whispers. And if this story moved your heart or opened your understanding, I invite you to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Kingdom Stories for more powerful journeys through Scripture. Together, let us walk in the light of the one who still speaks, still saves, and still leads us toward hope.